We're on. Good morning. Hey, we have no mic, so if I start whining, yell at me. So what's happening Thursday? Fourth exam. I've warned you about it. Some of you will do very well. Some of you will take it lightly and will bomb it. Please don't be the person that bombs it. Study harder for this exam than any other exam. This is the exam that usually makes your grade or breaks your grade. Okay? We'll have a Q&A session Wednesday night. Cool? Any questions? I think 6:30. It's on the website though. I think 6:30. Okay, so we're going to wrap up hall hockey. We're going to wrap up pruning, knitting into pest control. So turn on page, this is page 95. We're talking about pruning. We have two kinds of specialty pruning. Topiary. Oop, oop, oop. And that's where you prune to a shape or a form. It's kind of cool stuff. And then we have espalier, which is pruning to a two-dimensional form. You know, usually some kind of trellis. I mean, it has a dimension of depth, but it's not very much. So these are specialty decorative kind of pruning. If you've been to Disney World, you've seen it. If you've been to any of the gardens in Europe, you've seen both types. Okay? So know the definition of those two words. And then when we prune, you want to always prune out what we call narrow crotch angles. This is a narrow crotch angle. Okay? You have to imagine this plant at one time was a branch. Kind of in the middle of that plant, it was a branch. Maybe I need another color. It was a branch that forked. Okay? So you had two little branches that was forking. And then as it gets bigger, each branch gets bigger and bigger in diameter. So if my two fingers started getting fatter every year, each one got fatter, eventually they're going to touch. They'll get so swollen that they touch. In between where they touch is skin. Okay? So if you have a narrow crotch angle, what happens is you get bark caught between that angle. We call that a bark inclusion. Bark inclusion. From the outside, it looks like solid limbs, but it's really not. It'd be like if I had two, would appear to be Siamese fingers, but there are really two fingers that just got grossly fat. That's a weak angle. That's a weak kind of branch. You want to always cut those out. Always prune out narrow crotch angles. And always save wide crotch angles, because wide crotch angles started out as a young branch with a side branch that had a wide or obtuse angle, and then wood develops between them. So it's a solid wood connection. These guys are incredibly strong. These guys are incredibly weak. So I just Googled a little while ago. Epiallier. Narrow crotch angle. And you can see examples of them. There's one. All those limbs close together. There's no way that tree's going to be live another 50 years. The two limbs, all the limbs will come together and it'll be just no physical support. That's the kind of limb that breaks off in a thunderstorm or a hurricane or a tornado or just even from their own weight. Always prune out narrow crotch angles. Now, let's go back. Hey, where is my, it is hot in here, isn't it? Yeah. You want me to do something about it? I can't. I can't do anything about it. Let's go back. I know we have a diagram on how to make a pruning cut. I'll be back. Ha! I'm a tree. So imagine I'm a tree, and imagine this is a limb. I want to cut off this limb. What would happen if I just took a saw right here and started cutting down? Oh, at a certain point, limb starts falling, and a real limb's gonna have some weight. So it can get to the point where it has so much weight, it literally breaks off. And when it does, it could tear bark all the way down the side of the tree. That leaves a big old nasty wound. It's not going to heal over. Rot's going to get in, so that's bad. So if you want to properly prune a limb, you have to use 3 cuts. First of all, your first 2 cuts is to remove the weight of the limb. So cut number 1 is you go out on the limb about 6 inches or a foot, it doesn't matter, and you start cutting from the bottom up, okay? Now when you do that, that limb's gonna start bending down. As soon as you feel your saw or your knife or your chainsaw getting in a bind, you pull it out. So cut as far as you can and get it out. Now, I got a cut right there. My second cut is further down the limb, but on the top. Cut 2 is from the top down. Okay, so I'm gonna cut it, saw, cut it, saw, and it's gonna start leaning. And if this were a heavy limb, it would rip off. Oh, my first cut intersected that. So now I have no big scar and a little bitty nub that's pretty light. So my third cut now is from the top down. Now if you look at a limb, right in that angle, you'll see a little bit of bunched up bark. Sometimes look like a little tuft of bark. We call that the bark ridge. And at the bottom of the limb, very often you can see a slightly swollen spot. It bulges out just a little bit. Your third cut is from the bark ridge to the top of that swollen spot we call the branch collar. If you can't see the branch collar, you just cut out at a slight outward angle. It's never flush, it's always sticking out a little bit. So my third cut is from the bark ridge to the branch collar. And, I just stabbed myself. No blood. And now, whoa, buddy. Now, when I cut off that limb, it has no weight, so it just gently falls to the ground. That wound will heal over about 1 inch a year. About 1 inch a year. Now, why do we cut at that angle? That's the inside healing zone. When that limb is cut off, inside that wood, it will clog itself up with tannins and resins to keep rot from getting in. And it'll hold off that rot for 2, 3, 4, 5 years. So I got a couple of years for that end to heal over. Okay? Now, we don't want to cut out big limbs. If we cut out big limbs, they take too long to heal over, and rot will set in even if you cut them properly before they heal over. So I always say you don't want to cut out a limb any bigger than your leg. It leaves too big of a wound. Okay? Small limbs up to the size of your leg. What do we call it if we cut out really large limbs? What pruning technique is that? Dehorning or pollarding. Or if it's a crepe myrtle, we call it crepe murder. Right? This is called target pruning. Target pruning, a 3-cut sequence to remove any limb. Cut number 1 out on the limb from bottom up. Cut number 2 further out on the limb from top down. The limb falls off. Cut off the nub, bark ridge to branch collar. Target pruning. Got that? Target pruning. That's some good bull right there, I'll tell you. Now, if you have a narrow crotch that has a bark inclusion, the bark ridge is right there, buried. You can't get your saw to the bark ridge. So you come out branch collar and intersect where you think the base of that bark inclusion is. And when it falls off, you leave a little cut nub right there. You do not cut from there to there because that's a stub. Okay? So even on narrow crotches, you have to go from the bark ridge, where you think it is, to the branch collar. Cool? Say, yeah. Thank you. Now, some rules for pruning. Page 96, some rules for pruning. Proper pruning really is nothing more than tree surgery. The difference between a person who target prunes and a person with a chainsaw is about $70 per hour. Knowing when to prune maybe get you up to $120 an hour by a certified arborist tree surgeon. So let's talk about when to prune based on how you prune. Number 1, growth state. It is best to prune the plant when it's dormant, when it is not growing. I don't know about you, but I've had several medical operations in my life, and for each one of them, they put me to sleep when they cut on me. And I'm glad for that. You know, plants are kind of the same way. It's less trauma if they're not growing than if you prune them while they are growing. And even though there's no feelings involved, it's less trauma. It's very much less traumatic. So prune them during the dormant state. For our part of the world, when are plants dormant? Wintertime. That's our prime dormancy period. So the best time to prune is winter. No doubt about it. We're coming into the pruning season. How do you know when winter is here? How do you know when winter is here to a plant? Leaves. When the last leaves fall off, which would be about another couple of weeks. And then when does spring come? Here? When the buds break. And when is that? March, early March. So our pruning time is probably mid-December to the end of February, 1st of March, before you see the new bud swelling for the next year's growth. That's our ideal pruning time. Winter is the pruning season. Now, if you have a plant that is susceptible to winter injury, in other words, the cold of winter can kill it, you have to wait and prune after the cold of winter, towards the end of winter. What's the coldest month of the year? February. Coldest month of the year is February. Our coldest spells will be the end of January, the 1st of February. So you want to prune after that. You want to prune after that immensely cold period and before the stuff starts growing. So that's about mid-February to the end of February. 1st of March, plants are going to start growing around here. So those last 2 weeks in February would be what you do for plants susceptible to winter injury. Why do you want to wait? Yeah, so you can cut off all the dead stuff. What if you prune in December and you cut off all the stuff that's gonna die and left all the stuff that's gonna, cut off all the stuff that's gonna live and left all the stuff that's gonna die. So you let winter do its damage, cut out the dead stuff, then do corrective pruning, okay? So rule number 1, prune during winter. Rule number 2, a plant susceptible to cold, prune at the end of winter, after the cold, and before the growth starts in the spring. Rule number, live oak tree, they laugh at our winters. Prune them anytime during the wintertime. You know, if you have a plant that you know has never been hurt by freezes in Texas, prune it anytime during the winter. Go home over the holidays, prune your parents' plants, you know, but not the winter sensitive ones. Now, a lot of times we grow plants in our landscapes because we like their flowers. Well, if you like a tree to flower, you got to prune it based on when it flowers. And all the plants in the world have basically 2 times in which they flower. All the trees in the world have 2 times when they flower. Plants that flower in the spring as the first thing they do. Name me a plant that flowers in the spring and that's the first thing it does. Fig. No. A peach. Pecans. Plums. Apples. Washington has a festival around it. Cherry blossoms, cherries. All those plants that have winter rest and they flower first time in the spring. Almost all of our fruit trees, not all of them, but almost all of our fruit trees, where the first thing you see in the spring is a flower, not a leaf, those are spring flowering plants, okay? Azaleas, camellias, rhododendrons, red buds, dogwoods, almost all of our fruit trees, pears, peaches, apples, plums, okay? You have to let them flower, then prune right after flowering. What would happen if you followed rule number 1 and rule number 2? What if you prune? What if you go home for Christmas and prune your peach trees, your camellias? You're pruning out next spring's flowers, you know? So you let them flower in the spring, and as soon as the flowers drop, you prune them. As soon as the flowers drops and before the leaves come out full force, you prune them. Okay? So you prune them immediately after flowering in the spring. That way you have maximum flowering for prettiness and then semi-dormant pruning for the plant. Now, we also have a group of plants that flower throughout the summer and early fall. Name me some plants that flower throughout the summer. Figs.
Bell pepper.
Huh?
Bell pepper.
Trees. Pecans flower in the spring. Peaches flower in the spring. Citrus. Yes, citrus. There's not a lot of trees flowering in the summer, right? Well, name them. Trees or shrubs? Perennial plants, trees or shrubs? Well, it's citrus, and then maybe, You get magnolia. Some magnolia, southern magnolia. Grape myrtle. Grape myrtles. Gardenias. Altheas. Roses. Hibiscus. So if you have a plant that you know flowers throughout the summer, you follow rule number 2. Rule number 1 and number 2. Prune during the dormant period. If it's susceptible to cold, do it towards the end of the winter. Hey, how about we just do everything towards the end of winter, whether it's susceptible or not? February is our pruning month. End of February is our pruning month. Cool? Now, transplanting. We kind of talked about that. We have a tree growing in the ground, and it has a root system that is mostly right under the soil surface, going usually out to the drip line. A few deep roots, but not too many. But the roots are really spread out. If I come in here and dig that tree and plant it over here, hey, let's just plant it next door. Dig a hole, put that tree in that hole where I got my root ball, and then my new tree sitting here. Doot, doot, doot. I've lost half the root system, if not more. It's going to die. I want you to watch landscapes around town this springtime. And watch, after they plant a beautiful landscape, drive back there 3 months later and see how many trees have died. Sometimes we lose half of our trees in a newly planted landscape because of this problem. So what are we going to do? Well, number one, what we could do is come in months at a time and maybe even a year, and with a shovel, prune the roots. And when we prune the roots, you'll get really dense roots branching right below that pruning spot. So when you transplant them, you have some more dense roots close to the trunk of the tree. So now maybe we've only lost 40% of the roots. And then we have to come up here to the top of the tree and selectively prune it out to get rid of extra branches, and we don't want them to ever grow back. So what pruning technique could we use to prune the top of the tree to decrease the amount of leaves, stems, and foliage, and they do not grow back? Thinning out. We thin out the shoot, and we root prune the roots. If you do that, you can transplant a pretty good sized tree. Now when you do that and you thin it out, you're taking out maybe half of the tree. The homeowner is not going to be happy with that. You killed my tree. Ma'am, I saved your tree. You killed my tree and I'm not paying you. Ma'am, please trust me. I saved your tree. No, you murdered my tree and I'm not paying you. What do you do? What do you do?
Burn that tree down.
Couldn't do that. What do? You need to give a pruning lesson to the homeowner. If we're going to transplant what we call a ball and burlap or bare root tree, you have to tell the homeowner, when I transplant it for it to live, I have to prune out at least half of the tops. If you won't let me do that, you need to find somebody else to do it for you, because I know it will die. Now, it may take 6 months to die, but you know it'll die, okay? So for transplanting, we thin out at the time of transplanting, and we root prune before transplanting, months to years. Take a year to prepare the tree, then move it. Gene could have transplanted his holly if he had 1 year's worth of root pruning, then transplanted it and thinned it out that same morning. The tree would still be alive. Dolores' holly would still be alive. I still haven't told Gene out about that, how he could have saved Dolores' holly. Last thing about pruning, I want you to know that we have some chemicals you can spray on plants that will kill the tip and cause branching. One reason we prune is to cause branching. Heading back causes branching. We have some chemicals you can spray on a tree that will cause branching. Good in landscapes. I want my shrubs to branch, but I don't want to spend the money on the labor to prune. So just know, recognize the names of chemicals that are chemical, what we call them pinching agents. Chemical pinching agents. Hey, and I think that's it about pruning. Any pruning questions? You still hear me in the back? Huh? How can you hear and text at the same time? Huh? You guys know there's a new law in town, right? You can't text and drive. Anybody get a ticket yet? No? I haven't gotten a ticket yet. Okay. Pest. I saved pest for last. I'm pretty sure for many of you, I am a pest in your life right now. You know, even on the Wizard of Oz, there was the good witch and the bad witch. So I like to think of myself as a good pest. So turn to page 97. Pest. What is a pest? It's any undesirable organism that is in any way injurious to plants. Name for me a pest. Aphids. What? Grubs. I thought you said drugs. Grubs. Beetles. Scale. Mistletoe. Mealyworms. Thrips. Mites. Now you're naming real things that go eat your plants. Name me a pest that's injurious but doesn't eat or kill your plant very much. Huh? A woodpecker. Squirrels. Fungus. Armadillos. Mole. Huh? Caterpillars. Name me a hidden pest that injures your plants but doesn't eat it or kill it. A big tree. I go clear out a spot in the forest and I plant a garden. It ain't gonna grow. Big trees shade too much. Those big trees are pests. If you want your garden there, you better clear that piece of forest out. So it might be something that directly injures or indirectly injures. Weeds. A weed in your garden simply is competing for space and water and fertilizer. It outgrows your plants. Doesn't directly hurt the plants, just outgrows it. So that's a pest. We have nice little deer come through my yard every now and then. We like watching them. They eat my wife's roses. Just about the time they're flowering, looking pretty, they'll come in that night and they'll eat them down to the nubs. Yeah, my wife gets so mad. She said, baby, I'm gonna shoot those deer. You can't be shooting in town.
Go hang a bar of soap.
Go hang a bar of soap. They don't need to bathe. I've done everything. I have peed around my wife's rose bushes. Really? I put human hair around my wife's rose bushes. I've never done soap because I know that's not going to work. I still come and eat it. I'm putting rotten eggs. I've sprayed them with Tabasco sauce. I've done things that would keep you away. They just wait for the next rain, then come eat it. They're patient. Okay, so how can I control them? Huh? Put a fence. That's about it. Now they're a pest. She can't have roses in her yard. Hardly. Because of deer is a pest. Okay? So a pest is anything that's directly or indirectly injurious to your plants or just out of place. You know, in my wife's flower bed, if a tomato plant comes up, it's a pest. I kill it. I pull it up. We don't want tomatoes in her petunias. You know, that's a pest, that's a weed. So it's anything. It's not just bugs and stuff that eat it. Those are the obvious ones, okay? Now, ag gets a bad rap because we get a bad rap that we kill pests, that when we have a pest, first thing we do is kill it. What would we use to kill a pest? A pesticide. Ag gets a bad rap that we use a lot of pesticides to kill pests, and we do. You know why we use a lot of pesticides to kill pests? No. No. Why we use so much pesticides to kill pests? Do you know why? Each and every one of you. It's your fault. How can it be your fault? Yeah, you said it, what? You demand, absolutely, unequivocally, pest-free produce. You will not buy a peach with a worm in it. My generation learned to eat around the hole. You will not buy an ear of corn with a corn earworm in the tip of it. My generation knew to cut the tip off before you cooked it. You demand pest-free food, not only pest-free, blemish-free. You don't even want to eat something, a lettuce leaf that has a hole in it, but the pest is gone. The American consumer is the pickiest consumer in the world, and you absolutely demand all of your produce to be almost 100% pest-free. And so sometimes to make it 100% pest-free, we got to start killing pests. You know? If you would have a tolerance, if you would tolerate a corn earworm in every third ear of corn you buy, then we wouldn't have to use as much pesticides. But it's your fault. It's my fault. It's all of our faults. Okay? So what we do is we try to figure out how to control pest damage. You know, we can get rid of the pest. If there's a pest on a plant, we can knock it off before we sell it to you. If it's a pest that has just been sucking that plant, like a mosquito does, we can get rid of the pest and sell it to you. As long as it doesn't have a blemish, we'll sell it to you. Okay? So what we do is we try to produce as much blemish-free plants as we can by controlling the pest damage, not necessarily the pest. You know? If every deer that walked in my yard checked in with me and I muzzled it, you know, hey, Bruto, over here, babe. And I muzzled it, the whole time it's in my yard, and when it leaves, it comes to me and I unmuzzled it, we wouldn't have a problem with deer. You know? So we use a lot of very unique strategies to control pest damage without killing the little puppies, you know, without using too much pesticides. So that's what I want to talk about. If you want to control pest damage, or if it's a disease, pest infection, there's 3 strategies. In order for a pest to damage a plant, number 1, the plant has to be susceptible. Number 2, the pest has to be present. And number 3, it has to be the environment that's good for the pest and bad for the plant. Back when we talked about irrigation, very briefly I mentioned to you, it wasn't on the exam, but I told it to you, that if you use an irrigation method that gets the leaves wet, they will have more fungal diseases because fungi need that moisture to grow. So we have a lot of plants that have a lot of leaf fungal diseases that you wouldn't eat full of all that fungus, like buying bread full of mold. You wouldn't eat a head of lettuce full of fungus, okay? All we have to do sometimes is keep the water off the leaves, use drip irrigation, and we can produce fungus-free produce. Okay. So that would be an example of a case where it's the environment that's favorable for the plant, not favorable for the pest. If it's too wet, it's favorable for the pest and not the plant. So we have 3 strategies. Use the right plant, control the pest, control the environment. So when I buy tomatoes to plant a garden, I always buy a tomato that is labeled VFN. It's called a VFN variety. Big boy. I'm gonna look on that pack. Somewhere it's gonna say VFN. Good, I'll buy this. That means that tomato was bred to be genetically resistant to the 2 diseases, verticillium and fusarium. You don't need to know any of this. And the soil worm called nematodes. So they bred the tomato to be resistant to those 3 major tomato pests. I can plant that tomato in my yard, in soil that has nematodes, around plants that are infected with verticillium and fusarium fungal diseases, and they're sitting there happy as a lark because they're totally immune to it. Okay? So a lot of our crop plants, we have bred into them disease resistance, pest resistance. And that's the first thing you look for. You know, I will tell you, you can go to some nursery and you can ask them, I need to buy some shrubs for my yard and I want to buy deer-resistant varieties. And there's a few plants that you can plant that deer will not eat. For example, they won't eat lantana. I got lantana in my yard, all over the place. Deer won't eat it. Genetically resistant. Yes?
This for you like BT cotton?
No, that's going to be a little bit later. Okay? Same kind of concept though. Okay? So genetic resistance. Roses, I have 2 kinds of roses in my yard deer won't eat. I don't know why, but I planted about 12 different kind of roses. They ate 10 of them. They pretty well ate an 11th one, but the 12th one of them, they never, ever, ever took a bite. I'm tempted to go eat the leaves and flowers one day to see if they taste really gosh awful bad. But I'm just not, I don't have the guts to do that yet. But so I have one genetically resistant rose plant to deer. I wish it was a pretty rose. It's a homely little rose, but at least it's a rose. So number one strategy, select genetically resistant plants. Whatever it is you're growing, whatever the major pest is in your area, in your yard, ask, is there a genetically resistant variety of this plant? And if you plant it, your problem is licked. We could find a strain of corn that no caterpillar in the world would ever take a bite of. We'd never have to worry about spraying our corn for caterpillars or boll weevil for cotton or those doggone worms and plums. Number two, proper environment. A lot of this is common sense, like keep the leaves dry. Okay? We have a common fungal disease on our landscape plants. You don't need to know this, but it's called powdery or downy mildew. If you get the leaves wet, it grows like a little bread fungus on the top of the leaves. Keep it dry, you don't have as much of it. Okay? When you water a plant with a hose, what do you do with the hose after you're finished watering?
Roll it up.
Huh?
Roll it up.
Roll it up? You ever put it on the ground? You ever lay a hose down, pick it up later? Mm-hmm. Why would you do that? So like when you're having a picnic, do you like chunk your fork on the ground sometimes? Then pick it up, start eating with it? Violate the 5-second rule? You ever do that? You ever drop a hamburger on the ground? Pick up that hamburger patty, it's all full of dirt? Oh, that's no problem. You put it back in your bun and you throw it away. It's dirty down there, right? The worst thing you can do for a plant is throw the hose on the ground. Get the end of that hose dirty. It's dirty down there. People diseases, dog diseases, cat diseases. Hey, even plant diseases. Now when you spray your plant, you're getting every plant infected if it picked up some disease down there. We don't take one bottle of water and we don't all share it, do we? Half of us coughing. Here, you want some water? So a lot of it's common sense. Sanitation, good, proper environment. Okay? And then, if we can't find a genetically resistant variety, if we can't find good sanitation, good environmental control that keeps the pest away and keeps the plant strong, then we start worrying about eliminating the pest. And notice I didn't say we're not going to kill it yet. We're just going to eliminate it. Actually, killing the pest will be our absolute last resort. The use of a pesticide to kill the pest, to shoot it with a pesticide, is our absolute last resort. We're going to try to eliminate it before we have to kill it. Okay? What the government does is it uses quarantine. We have a citrus disease in Texas called citrus yellows. We have no known cure for it. In the Rio Grande Valley, if you were a citrus grower and the USDA inspectors came by and they found your citrus trees infected with this citrus virus called citrus yellows, you know what they would make you do? Bulldoze your citrus trees and burn them, because there's no known cure. And they say, oh, come and pick my citrus and sell them first, right? No. Burn the fruit too. Because if you ship the fruit out, you're spreading citrus yellows across the country. One of our biggest problems in all fruit trees is called a fruit fly. It's a little bitty fly that lays eggs on fruit, and the little larva bores into the fruit. You get little bitty worms, and you don't like worms. You bite into a plum and there's a worm in there, you'll never buy that fruit again. Okay, so these little fruit flies that have little bitty baby worms in the fruit, they're devastating. If you have a shipment of fruit coming into Texas and the inspectors notice one fruit fly flying around that box, they deny the entire shipment. And they may ban all the shipments from that part of the country until you get your fruit flies under control. So about 3 decades ago, I remember, California and Texas has always been big ag competitors. So about 3 decades ago, California banned all nursery produce, all nursery shrubs, trees, from being shipped and sold in California because it's a big market, okay? Because they said, we have brown snail. That in some of the pots, they found a little snail, it's a little brown snail, called brown snail. And it's a pest. It doesn't hardly eat a whole tree, it's a snail, but it's a pest. And California didn't have brown snail, and Texas had brown snail. So they said, hey, you can't ship anything here again, ever, because we found a brown snail in one of your shipments. There wasn't a lot of brown snail. Most of the shipments had no brown snail. Why did California do that? To decrease competition. They didn't give a dip. So you know what we did? California started shipping stuff into Texas, and our people went and inspected it. Said, hey, you got nematodes. You got nematodes in these plants. Ship them back. We banned all shipments from California coming into Texas. It was a nursery trade war between brown snail and nematodes. Neither one of them was a problem. Every plant in Texas has some brown snail and some nematodes, you know. So sometimes it's a political thing. Sometimes it's a real thing, like this citrus yellows. To save our citrus industry, we can't let it spread. Quarantines prevent pests from spreading. Most of the pests we have are imported. Most of our major pests we have are imported. Fire ants imported. Nutria imported. Citrus yellows is imported. Big, fat Norway rats are imported. Nutria are imported. Almost all the pests we have are imported. Why would an imported pest be more of a pest here than there? Yeah.
Foreign germs.
Yeah. In your native habitat, everything eats everybody, and the whole nature's in balance. If you just import the pest and not the enemy, the pest flourishes. Okay? So we quarantine to minimize spread of pests across the globe as much as we can. And when done properly, it's very effective. Sometimes it's used for political purposes. Well, that's politicians for you. Okay? Quarantine. Next is good sanitation. That's kind of part of that environmental control. Keep your hoses off the ground. If you have a pest that's flying pest and you have a greenhouse, put screens on your windows. Put fly tape to catch the flies, the pests that are flies. Good sanitation. Don't you like your surgeons to wash their hands before they operate on you? You know, when we go into some nursery operations, greenhouse operations, all the workers wash their hands before they handle plants. Because if you handle an infected plant, you don't want to spread it to the other one. I've been in greenhouses before where they had a pan of disinfectant Clorox, and you walked in the pan to disinfect your feet before you walked in the greenhouse, just to keep the soil-borne pest out. So if you go into a nice farming operation, it's going to be clean. It's going to be free of weed pests that can spread, other kind of pests that eat. It's going to be clean. It's going to be nice and sanitary and clean. Physical control, screens and that kind of stuff, okay? And then biological control, that's my favorite. I love biological control. There is no king of the jungle. There is no organism on this planet that no other organism in the world attacks. Even the mighty lion can be killed by pneumonia. There's a bacteria or virus that gets into it. You know, so it's not just the lions and the gazelles, but it's something that attacks it. So biological control is, we go back to where that pest was native. We find out what kept its population in balance, what ate it, what fed on it, what infected it, what caused its diseases, and we bring the biological control here to control the pest. Okay? First one was Bacillus thuringiensis. The first commercial biological control on a large scale was Bacillus thuringiensis, and it's a bacteria. It's a bacterial disease of caterpillars. It's a stomach poison. It gets into the gut of the caterpillar, and totally ties up the digestive tract, making it non-functional, causing constipation. Its digestive system stops working and it stops pooping. And then the caterpillar dies from terminal constipation. True. In fact, if you see a caterpillar infected with that bacteria, this is true, it'll kind of get lethargic. And then caterpillars have two little legs on the end of their butt. It'll grab onto a limb or something and it'll hang upside down. You can hear them. I gotta go, please. And they'll hang there until they die. Now that is a terrible death. To die from terminal constipation. So the scientists that discovered this bacterial disease of terminal constipation to caterpillars went to the federal government. Really, honest to goodness, went to the federal government with a bag full of bacterial spores, brown bacterial Bacillus thuringiensis spores, and said, federal government, we would like for your permission to spray this bacteria on all the lettuce being grown in California. Why? To kill all the caterpillars so we don't have to use pesticides. Well, what kind of bacteria is it? It's a bacteria that causes terminal constipation of caterpillars. And the federal government said, let me get it straight. Okay, you got this bacteria. It gets into a caterpillar's gut and causes terminal constipation. And you want to spray that on all the lettuce? And people were going to eat that? And won't the bacteria be on the lettuce leaves? Yes, sir, it will be. We'll spray it on every leaf. And so if people eat that lettuce, won't they have the bacteria in their stomach? That is right, sir, or ma'am. How do you know that that bacteria won't cause terminal constipation in people? Well, because we don't think it will. Well, you're going to have to prove that. And not only that, it can't cause terminal constipation in birds and eagles and armadillos and snail darters and hoot owls and any other living animal on the face of this earth. It's got to be a disease specific to caterpillars and only caterpillars. And it was. In fact, some of the scientists that studied it proved their point. I remember one took a tablespoon of bacterial spores and ate it to prove it would pass through his gut. Now you have to imagine this bacteria is going through this guy's gut. It's alive. It's looking around. Hey, Mabel, I don't think we're in a caterpillar. I don't know what we're in, but I don't think it's a caterpillar. So we're just going to pass on through, all right? And there it goes. And they tested and tested and tested. That bacteria didn't affect anything other than the larval stage of some insects. And so they finally said, yeah, you can do it. You can go buy it today called Dipel. You don't need to know this, but it's called Dipel, D-I-P-E-L. Little brown powder, you spray it on your vegetables, and it kill any caterpillars that eat the vegetable, get it in their gut. You'll find them hanging upside down a day or two. Oh, would somebody please shoot me? You know? That was our first biological control. And you still use it today. Goes by the abbreviation BT, Bacillus thuringiensis, capital B, small t. So the genetic engineers got wind of that. So they went in that bacteria. They pulled out the gene that causes the protein to be made that causes the terminal constipation. And they took that caterpillar gene and they put it in a cotton plant. Now the cotton plant has the gene to make the protein that will kill the caterpillar when it eats it. The genetic engineers made the plant toxic to boll weevils, the larvae of boll weevils. They went back to the government, said, hey, we took this cotton plant, this tomato plant, these corn plants, now we've done it to a lot of plants, and we put the Bacillus thuringiensis gene in it, and we've made all these crop plants self-immune to caterpillars. Can we sell it and use it? The government says, wait. It's going to kill caterpillars? Will it kill pretty caterpillars or just ugly caterpillars? Well, it'll kill all caterpillars. It'll kill monarch butterfly caterpillars? Yeah. I don't know if you should do that. So then they used it on plants that the pretty butterflies and moths didn't feed on. And we have a lot of crops nowadays that are grown with that gene. You know what they're called? BT. We have BT corn, BT cotton, BT all kinds of things. And it was our first genetically modified organism that was used routinely in production agriculture. Okay? So BT went from a biological control to a genetically modified control. It is the most widely used biological control organism today. Okay, some other ones. We use, I'm trying to grab it and pull it over. We use grass carp in our lakes to control submerged aquatic weeds. You can buy them and get a permit to put them in your stock tanks that will control all submerged aquatic weeds. They're basically fish cows. What's next on your list? What's below grass carp? Predaceous mites. A mite is a spider. A predaceous mite is a mite that eats other mites. Oh my gosh, there's one eating one right there, right now. That's a red spotted mite eating a thrip. Oh, Lord, have mercy. There's a mite eating a mite. That's a bad mite eating a good mite. Oh my goodness, mites have no conscience. They eat whatever they want. So we can get predaceous mites that eat bad mites. What's next on your list? What? Parasitic wasp. Oh, these mothers are bad. These mothers are bad. There's one right there. See its butt? See what its butt's doing? It's laying eggs inside that caterpillar. They hatch. They eat their way out. Sometimes they emerge, hanging on, continuing to eat their way out. That is some kind of insect cruel. You can buy parasitic wasps that will eat and parasitize, well, they actually parasitize other bad things. Sometimes you'll find on a plant, we'll see aphids in a minute, you'll find an aphid with a hole in its butt. A parasitic wasp laid an egg, the wasp ate its way, pupated, and emerged as a new wasp to parasitize another one. Parasitic wasp. Oh, am I glad they don't lay their eggs in people. They're all over the place. Makes me itch. What's next? Trichoderma is a fungus that attacks other fungus. It's a fungus that eats a fungus. Now that's good. Got a good fungus eats a bad fungus. Infects a bad fungus. That's good. What's next? Allelopathy. That's where a plant secretes chemicals and doesn't let anything grow under it. It's almost like they secrete their own herbicide. Allelopathy. One plant secretes a chemical into the soil, keeps other plants from growing. What's next? Pesticides. If all these strategies fail, pull out the guns and shoot them with a pesticide. What kind of pesticide do we use to control fungi? Fungicide. Fungicide, fungi. What kind of pest do we use to control bacteria? Bactericide. If we put it in a human body, we call it a antibiotic. Plants, we call it bactericide. What do we use to control weeds? Herbicide. What do we use to control spiders and mites? Arachnicide. Arachnicide or miticide. Miticide. What do we use to control viruses? We don't have any. We don't have any good chemical ways to control viruses. That's why viruses are such deadly diseases. It's almost no control of them. The worst diseases on this planet are viral diseases. We can't even solve the common cold. We can't kill the common cold virus. We can lessen it, but we can't eradicate it, you know? So know your asides: fungicides, arachnicides, miticides, herbicides, pesticides in general. Okay, so now let's identify some pests. Let's go through our pest ID, turn to page 98. And largely, you're going to walk me through this page. I'm going to show you pictures. Two major pests in the plant world. Insects and mites. Mites are a kind of spider. Insects. Has a head with some eyes. Has a thorax, like a chest cavity. And has an abdomen. Has 3 body parts. A head, a thorax, and an abdomen. Head, thorax, and abdomen. 6 legs. 6 legs attached to the thorax, 3 on each side. To the head, attached 2 antennae. The butt is naked, sometimes it's ridged and fat. Insects, 3 body parts, head, thorax, and abdomen. 6 legs, 2 antennae. May or may not have wings. If it's an ant, no wings. If it's a butterfly, big old butterfly wings. If it's a beetle like the June bug, big old hard wings. May or may not have wings. 3 body parts, 6 legs, 2 antennae, may or may not have wings. A mite, which is a kind of spider, 2 body parts. The head and the thorax is fused. It's called the cephalothorax. I've never X'd that word on exam. And has an abdomen. 2 body parts. Head and thorax fused, cephalothorax, and an abdomen. How many legs? 8. 3 on each side. What kind of pesticide do I use to control an insect? Insecticide. What kind of pesticide do I use to control a mite? A miticide. First thing you got to do is identify if you have insects or mites, because they don't necessarily kill each other. I will ask you that on the exam. What kind of pest has 3 legs, 3 body parts, 6 legs, 2 antennae, or which has 2 body parts, 8 legs, and no antenna? It's easy to look at a spider and count 8 things hanging off of it. Insect has 8 things too. You have to count number of body parts. Okay? Our major insect pest, the one that you will most likely encounter, is in the order Hemiptera. Actually, in the notes online, I think I'm still calling it Homoptera. The modern name is now, they're using Hemiptera. And there's 4 of them. And they have sucking mouth parts. They suck plant sap. They suck phloem sap. They suck the phloem out of a plant just like a mosquito sucks the blood out of you. They are a plant-sucking insect. So they live on a liquid diet. That means they go to the bathroom a lot. It means they pee a lot. They secrete liquid excrement a lot. They live on a sugar diet from the phloem. They don't ever get all the sugar out. When they pee, which is left on the leaves, is a watery, sugary solution. It's called honeydew. It looks like a drop of dew on a leaf, but if you touch it, it's sticky, and if you lick it, it's sweet. And I tried to find some today. I always lick it. It's pretty cool. Called honeydew. And then on that honeydew, a mole will grow, and you'll see a black mole. So let's see. Let's look at the first Hemiptera, an aphid. An aphid. There's an aphid. Look at all these little aphids. Sometimes they're called plant lice. And let's see if we can find one secreting honeydew. Sometimes you'll find one that has a little drop of liquid on its butt. Ba-da-ba, ba-da-ba, boop, boop. Sometimes you'll see ants carrying them around. Ants. How about we look for ants, 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 and aphids. Oh, there's some ants. Look at all those ants running around those aphids. Look at that. Look at that ant. Look at that ant. Look at that ant. What's it doing?
Eating.
No. Well, yeah, but no. What is it eating? Honeydew. It's milking the aphid. When it secretes the drop of honeydew, it's lapping it up, and that's their food source. Ants form aphids. That honeydew will drop on the leaf, and that's the sticky stuff you see. So how do you recognize aphids? By seeing honeydew and or sooty mold on the leaves. Another one is, what's next on your list? Mealybugs? Mealybugs. They look like little cotton masses. In fact, when you get a lot of them, so you can see that they're like cotton around them. They'll get a whole mass of cotton that's wax. So they live under this waxy coat. And they have sucking mouth parts. You recognize them because of the white wax. It looks like took a Q-tip and cut it in half, glued it on the leaf. Under there will be mealybugs. So mealybugs is another Hemiptera that's a sucking insect. You'll also see honeydew and sooty mold for them. What's next? What?
Scale.
Scale. Scale are like little turtles. Not that kind of scale. That kind of scale. They look like little turtles on the leaves. They have a hard shell. When they're little, they crawl up somewhere, find a good spot to eat, put their little proboscis in the phloem sap, start sucking phloem sap, make that hard shell, they never move again. In fact, their legs fall off. That's kind of cruel. Hey, why? Baby, I'm home here, baby, just in my house. They just do it right there, okay? So if you see little scale, look like little turtles, that's scale. Little cottony masses, that's mealybug. See those little kind of light-colored plant lice running around, that's aphids. And then the last one is white fly. White fly. And there it is, beautiful little white fly. It's about the size of a gnat. That's an adult, it's probably a male, it has no mouth. It can't eat. Its only job in life is to mate, and then it dies. And then the females lay their eggs all over the place, and the little eggs grow up into little bitty nymphs, and it's the larvae that do the plant sucking. So if you ever walk up to a plant and hit it, and little flies come up and down, little white flies come up and down, you got white fly. Okay? So if you see honeydew or sooty mold on your plant, you either have an aphid, a mealybug, a scale, or a white fly. One of the four hemipteras that are plant pests. Now there are other kinds of sucking insects that don't affect plants, but these are four that do pests. I want you to know those four. What's next on your list? Thrips. God, I should, maybe I get this, while I'm doing it, I'm gonna get this going. I'm gonna try to get this going. Document camera. Okay, so thrips. Yes. Thrips. So let's see if we can focus on it. Turn our light on. How come my light won't come on? Ah, there it is. There it is. Ah, it's beetle. Ah. There's a beetle. Oh, look at it. Go, 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 go. You see him? You see him? See him? Go, 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 go. That's thrips. Pollen starts running around. That's thrips. Okay? They're usually in flowers. They eat through part of the flower, but not all the way through. And the port forms a little film, like a window. So you'll see little windows on the flower or the young leaves. So if you ever see little windows on flowers and leaves, shake them off, you probably have thrips. They're devastating on flowers and young leaves. So that's thrips. Hey, while we're here, we got some, where's our mealybugs? While we're here, let's show you some mealybugs. See that cottony mass? That's our mealybugs. Okay, what's next on your list after thrips? Leaf miners. They lay their eggs in a leaf. A little larva hatches, and it tunnels its way through the leaf. Here you can see one where the larva is inside, and then it emerges. Oh, can't see it yet. Y'all are so picky where you won't be able to see stuff. So that's the leaf miner. Little trails throughout the leaf. Leaf miners. What's next? Caterpillars. Caterpillars. Yeah. They have chewing mouth parts. They have voracious appetites. They eat humongous amounts of leaves. They eat whole leaves. There's a leaf with holes in it. I don't know what insect it was, but it was an insect with a chewing mouth part. Caterpillars have chewing mouth parts. It very well could be a caterpillar. If on the leaf I saw some turds, little baby turds, it'd be caterpillars. Caterpillars poop a lot. If you have chewed leaves, holes, and little caterpillar turds, it's caterpillars. You're not going to see them because when you touch the plant, they fall off there on the ground. They let loose and they play dead. Okay? Caterpillars are the larvae of butterflies. They might be pretty, but they're devastating. What's next? Grubs. Your most common grub would be the June bug grub. It's a grub in the ground. It has chewing mouth parts that eat roots and stuff. So June bug grubs. What's next? Beetles. You know what beetles are. We just saw a beetle running on the table. It's those hard-shelled things. A lot of them eat plants. They have chewing mouth parts. Chewed pieces of leaf gone, no poop, probably beetles. Chewed pieces of leaf gone, poop, probably caterpillars. Then after that, grasshoppers have chewing mouth parts too, but you're probably going to see them hopping around your plants. So chewed pieces of leaf, grasshoppers hopping around, that's probably your pest. Caterpillars, beetles, grasshoppers, chewing mouth parts. Aphids, mealybug, whitefly, scale, sucking mouth parts, honeydew, and sooty mole. Thrips eat halfway through the leaf, leave little windows. Thrips don't make a hole all the way through, make little windows, little transplanted windows. What's next? Hoopers. Weevils. Weevils have proboscises. They mainly eat grains, stored grains. You've eaten many a weevil in your life. How many of you have had cornbread or flour? You've eaten a lot of weevils. There's a limit. The government lets you have X number of weevil parts and weevil larvae and weevil eggs in all of your produce. If you keep your cornmeal and your flour long enough, you can find them crawling around inside. When I was a kid, my mother always sifted the cornmeal before she cooked it to get the eggs and the larvae out. It's a very good protein source. What's next on your list? Mites. Mites are spiders. The most common one in plants is called the spider mite. It's a little bitty mite. You know, mites inject solution into their prey, digest it, and lap up the soup. Spider mites ingest their saliva into the leaf, lap up the digested leaf, leaving little bitty yellow spots. And if you look under the leaf, you can see a delicate spider web. And sometimes you can see the spider mite. They're about the size of the head of a pin. Little bitty, and they're usually reddish colored. So if you see yellow speckles, or little bitty cobwebs, little bitty ones, or little bitty things underneath running around, I think something's moving, that's going to be spider mites. Yellow speckles. We recognize all of these insects mostly by seeing the damage, not the bug. I might describe the bug and actually what it is, or I might describe the damage and say what it is. Honeydew, sooty mole, one of the Homoptera, chewed insects, beetles, caterpillars, grasshoppers. Yellow specks, cobwebs, mites. What's next?
Nematodes.
Nematodes. They live in the soil. You'll never see them. The most common one will take the root and make it all knotted in appearance, called the root knot nematode. If you ever pull up your plant, it looks like your roots have mumps. They probably have nematodes. It's a soil worm. Very hard to control. Kind of like a tapeworm of plants. What's next? Mollusk? Yeah. M-U-L-L-O-S-K. Mollusks. If it has a shell, it's a snail. If it doesn't have a shell, it's a slug. They have chewing mouth parts. Wow, baby. Slug. Slug. They have chewing mouth parts. How can you recognize if it was a snail that chewed the piece of your leaf off? Slime trail. Slime trails, chewed pieces of leaf, snail or a slug. Has a shell, it's a snail. No shell, it's a slug. Best control is stale beer. Put a little container of stale beer, they'll go after the beer because they like beer and the carbohydrates, and they will drown because they have no legs. What's next? Huh? What's next?
Pathogens.
Pathogens? Okay. Fungi. Bread mold. Fungi, bread mold. They'll usually cause brown spots on leaves. Brown circular spots. Brown circular spots, fungi. If you see the actual mold, like powdery mildew, if you see what looks like bread mold on a leaf, it's a fungi. So you might see the filaments or brown spots. Bacteria, soft, mushy tissue. Soft, mushy tissue. They cause a rot. The leaf will rot to be soft and slimy. Okay, so if you ever take a plant and like you grab the leaf and it like slips apart, all slimy, bacteria. Viruses will cause a yellow mottling. You look at a leaf, and the leaf is like irregularly yellow, mottled yellow, almost like a paisley kind of yellow. Viruses. You recognize the bacteria, the fungi, and the virus by their symptoms on the leaves. You don't need to know anything else on that table or anything about weeds at the bottom. See some of you Wednesday, see the rest of you Thursday.